All right, guys. We're going to start off by just discussing the other side of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is taking the sun's energy and using that energy to build sugars from carbon dioxide and water. What we're doing with cellular respiration is the opposite. So you can see this up here. Cellular respiration, how cells break down sugars, and fats for that matter, to generate ATP. And so here's your chemical formula. We've got glucose plus oxygen is going to be broken down and rearranged into carbon dioxide and water. And in the process, generate 36 ATP molecules inside of cells. Now, that 36 ATP is going to come from basically 3 steps. So cellular respiration is using 3 separate chemical processes that allow us to generate some ATP with each step. Now, again, this is not balanced. It's not a balanced equation. In chemistry, we need to make sure that if I've got 6 carbons here, then all 6 carbons are accounted for over there. And so just quickly, if this is 6 carbons, then I would be producing 6 CO2 molecules. If this is 12 hydrogens, then that would be producing 6 water molecules. But in order to make all those CO2 and all those water, I'm going to need more oxygen. And that's why we breathe. So in order to fully break down sugars into carbon dioxide and water, we need to keep breathing, okay? So everybody take a big, deep breath so you can break down some sugars, generate some ATP in those brain cells, and keep listening. Nice job. All right, so sugars. Now, what do we do with them? Well, we break them down in 3 basic steps. Step 1 is called glycolysis. Okay, glycolysis literally means the death of water. Lysis is to kill or destroy. Sugar, the death of sugar. So here we go. So we're going to destroy a sugar molecule. We've got a 6-carbon glucose molecule. Very first thing that happens is we snap this bond and we break a sugar down into 2 3-carbon chains. Now these 3-carbon chains are not pGal. That's what we talked about at the end of photosynthesis. In photosynthesis, you remember, the light-independent reactions of the Calvin cycle produced pGal, which was also a 3-carbon sugar. And 2 pGals formed glucose. This is confusing, but the way these carbons and the hydrogens and oxygens around them are organized, not the same molecule. So these 2 guys have a different name. They're called pyruvate. Pyruvate, okay? So glycolysis, step 1, is breaking down a sugar molecule, glucose, into 2 pyruvates, okay? So this is that very first step. We'll talk about this in more detail in another quick slide. Step 2, once we have these pyruvate molecules, they will travel to the mitochondria. And in the mitochondria, they get broken down further in a cycle. Basically, it's another cycle that instead of building carbon chains, you're sliding or breaking down carbon chains and releasing CO2. Again, we'll talk about the details more in another video. But the step is called the Krebs cycle. Or some books call it the citric acid cycle, because citric acid is a 4-carbon chain that's kind of in the middle of that cycle. So Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle. This happens in the mitochondria, and it's going to further break down sugars. And then finally, the very last step of this whole process, step 3, I'm going to have to put it down here. I don't think the video can get it. 3, okay, is a big old long name. It's called Electron transport phosphorylation. Okay, electron transport phosphorylation. That's just a really fancy way of saying that we're going to run electrons through the membrane of the mitochondria, and it's going to phosphorylate ADP into ATP. I'm going to add another phosphate to ADP. So basically, this is a really fancy way of saying we're going to use electron energy to make a bunch of ATP. Okay, so here's our 3 steps of cellular respiration, how we take sugars, break them down into carbon dioxide and water, all right? And then we're gonna do 3 separate videos, one on each step, just to kind of discuss the process in a little more detail. There we go.